The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's offering $15 million in Best Ball Mania 5. Sign the promo code SGPN to claim your first-time deposit offer of $2 bonus cash. Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm has the best AI picks and projections, and the football models are almost live. Claim your set in free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Rhythm, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Sunday night, roughly 9 p.m. Eastern Time on July 28th. I'm your host, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Will be the first of two episodes tonight. Probably going to record the next episode in an hour or so. Point is, though, we are going to be covering the second round of the Olympics in this episode. So they finally completed the first round after there was some rain on day one. So we finally completed all the matches, and as a result, we are here now in the second round of the Olympics. Now, I was going to recap what happened in the last episode for Atlanta. However, they didn't finish the match yet because there was some rain. So because of that, they are currently delayed. Right now, knock on wood, the lock looks really good, and the dog is still up in the air. So hopefully those cash, but point is, can't really recap it when the Thompson and Nishioka match did not end yet. Anyway, before we get into any of the actual recap of the first round for the Olympics, I want to remind you once again, to like, subscribe on YouTube. We finally crossed 400. Hopefully, we'll get to 500 over the next couple of weeks. Have seen a big spike, though, in subscribers. Hopefully, you are one of them. And if not, then you can definitely hit the like button and subscribe to get future episodes for the podcast. Now, a reminder, if you're still listening to the podcast audio only on Spotify or Apple, that's fine too. Don't forget to rate or review the podcast. Did see a couple of reviews recently, so thank you, but we could always use more. Leave a review if you can. Plus, a reminder, check out the SGPN merch store. We have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs, a lot of great content, and it's all cheap. So once again, it's very affordable, and I recommend getting yourself something. And a reminder to check out the merch store, not just for our show, but also for the other shows with the network. And the featured show is actually the Mothership Show, the Sports Gambling Podcast, which just launched their 32 NFL team previews for the upcoming season. And as a bonus, each team preview will have a code word. Submit the 32 code word phrase, and you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL Circa future bet. Subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts, and a reminder to download the SGPN app. So getting into the actual recap, a reminder, we're going to have to put the Atlanta recap on hold. We're going to have to get into the first round of the Olympics for previewing the second round, starting off with the first lock and dog picks for the actual tournament. We swept again. We've been on a phenomenal run, and it feels nice to get back into the sweep. I'd say swing of things, as we ended up losing the dog for the last episode, but we did end up sweeping. We had Mensik minus 2.5 games for the lock at minus 110. Never in doubt, Shevchenko really not great on clay. They had a 3-setter when they faced off on clay a year ago, but Mensik's 18 years old, and he has gotten progressively better as time's gone on. Shevchenko has been kind of the same. He's really more of a hard court guy, not good on clay, and Mensik kind of dominated most of the match. He was up a break early, and he coasted in the first set. Then he was actually up a break in the second, gave it back, but he eventually got another break later as he ended up winning that one in straight sets. So never in doubt, pretty straightforward, nice win there for the lock. For the dog, we actually went against something that I normally factor in to matches in a negative way. I went against the potential fatigue angle for Musetti, and I took him in straight sets at plus 110. Even though Musetti did end up, I'd say, fumbling the plus 600 outright for us in Umag, we still liked him in general, and we know that Monfils is well past his prime in 2024, and I thought Musetti would look sharp anyway. Fatigue was really not an issue because Musetti and Cerundolo destroyed their competition in the first round. Musetti won the first set 6-1. Second set was competitive, but eventually got the job done as he won 6-4 in the final set. So nice sweep there. Been a phenomenal run. Hopefully you've been cashing with us along the way, and hopefully we keep it rolling here for the future rounds of the Olympics. Anyway, to get into the actual recap, though, of the first round, a reminder, there were a couple of matches that were completed on Saturday. I did mention them in the last episode, but it was really just chalk. Alcaraz dominated, Djokovic dominated, Fritz beat Bublik, and you saw Medvedev dominate against Hijikata. Really, that was basically it. Nothing else to recap there. Moving on to the actual matches, though, for Sunday. Anything that caught my eye here, nice win by FAA, beating Giron in straight sets. Moutet came back from injury, and he ended up beating Nagal in a fun 3-setter. Ruud got the job done against Daniel. A main storyline, though, was de Minaur, who ended up dropping out of singles at the last minute. Not a shock. He rushed back early with some rib issues that caused him to retire or withdraw, in the Wimbledon tournament right before his matchup against Djokovic. And as a result, he kind of rushed back to try to play in the Olympics. I believe he's going to stick around for doubles, but he had to be replaced, and he got replaced by Bopana, who got destroyed by Struff. What exactly did you expect? Point is, though, de Minaur could not participate, and he ended up dropping out. Eubanks as one of the last choices for America because Tiafoe and Korda rejected the invitation, got killed by Hassan in the first round. Eubanks really bad on clay. Props him for actually showing up, though, because apparently nobody worth a damn on the U.S. team wanted to show up, especially for Korda and Tiafoe. So at least he tried, ended up getting destroyed. Nishikori tried, but he ended up getting destroyed by Draper as well in straight sets. Martinez, though, did lose a marathon to Vavasori. I believe Vavasori was the last-minute replacement for Sinner, and he ended up getting the job done in 3, so a nice win there for him. Besides that, Norrie dropped out for England, as you ended up seeing him getting replaced. Or no, sorry, he didn't drop out. There was a mistake with the actual board on SofaScore. You had Tsitsipas, who had a bit of a marathon there against Bergs, but he did win in 3. Nadal got the job done, as he ended up beating, Struff ended up beating Cabral. Not Bopana, sorry. Cabral, same idea. Point is, Struff ended up killing him, and you ended up seeing Struff win comfortably. Nadal ended up beating Fucsovics in 3. Fun match there. A nice win by Nadal. Now he faces off against Djokovic in the second round. You ended up seeing Musetti beat Monfils in straight sets. A bit of an upset with Safulin beating Tabilo. So not a great episode for the outrights because we had a couple of longer shots to win the quarters. That did not work out as we had Tabilo. And we also had Fees, who just can't beat Arnaldi. He just can't beat this damn guy. He's 0-5 lifetime against Arnaldi. Thought after winning Hamburg, Fees' overall momentum might carry him past this guy. He just can't beat him. It's just really as simple as that. It was competitive, though. Did go to a tiebreak into the second set, but Fees just can't beat Arnaldi, and that's kind of the story of it. So either way, Wawrinka ended up beating Kotov in a French Open revenge match after Kotov eliminated him in the French Open a couple months ago. So, Wawrinka not only beat him, but only dropped 2 games in the entire match. Mentioned before, Cerundolo had no, I'd say, ill effects of fatigue as he ended up destroying Barros Vera 6-2, 6-1. You saw Raonic lose in a 3-setter against Kepfer. No breaks in the entire match, and Kepfer got the job done in 3. Zverev won comfortably. Jari's disastrous past couple months continue as Pyron beat him in straight sets. And Martera pulled off an upset, beating Lajovic in 3. Nothing else to recap, though. No insane amount of drama, but you had some fun matches, and hopefully the matches are going to remain fun for the second round. Trying to think if there's any type of, I'd say, takeaways to mention. Not really. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I'm actually just happy there was no weather controversy for Sunday as well, because if there were some delays, then the tournament would have had some serious clogging. Not the case, though. They were able to make up lost time, and now we move on into the second round. Before we get into any of the actual preview, though, for the second round matchups, a reminder, by the way, for the schedule, we are not going to cover every round or every match from the second round. We're going to cover some matches that caught my eye, and as a result, we're probably going to go through maybe 8 to 10, if I had to guess, and then we'll give away some lock and dog picks at the end of the show. Either way, before we get into any of the actual second round preview matches or match previews, do want to remind everyone once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because they just launched their Underdog Streaks. Hit your first 2 pick'em entries, and they can go streaking. If you get an 11-0 run, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Plus, Best Ball Mania is alive with $15 million in prizes. You can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. I'm probably going to end up using my upcoming entries here with something Olympic basketball related or even Olympic tennis related moving forward, or baseball in general. Sign up the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and first deposit offer of the bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy. Promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by OddsJam. OddsJam is your one-stop shop for beating the sports books. OddsJam uses millions of data points from across every U.S. and Canadian sportsbook to show you the best value plays for your money. Their line shopping tool shows you the best price for any bet that you want to make on countless sports books, not just DraftKings and FanDuel, but also offshore books like BetOnline and Bovada. They also have Cut and many more. They also have an arbitrage tool, which will help you find opportunities to make money betting both sides of the same prop on different sports books to guarantee a positive ROI. They also have a fantasy tool that features the highest EV plays relative to the sportsbook's odds, allowing you to crush sites like Underdog Fantasy, and they even have a tool for finding the best sign-up bonuses. If you're interested in trying out OddsJam, you can get a 7-day free trial by using the link below, and don't forget to enter promo code SGPN to get 35% off your first month of the subscription. OddsJam.com, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the first round of the Olympics. Time to keep it rolling into the second round. Now, the second round is actually divided into 2 days once again, so not every match will be taking place on Monday. But to go through the actual card in no particular order, first match that caught my eye was the Cerundolo match against Humbert. Now, Cerundolo is a favorite, but not a big one, as Cerundolo is around minus 150. Humbert is around plus 130. For the spread, -1 for Cerundolo, +1 for Humbert, and the over-under games is set at 22.5. Now, you're looking at Cerundolo, who just won a title in Umag, and we thought fatigue might be an issue. Barrios Vera, really not good, though. He's mostly a challenger level player, but Cerundolo buried him, only dropping 3 games in the entire match. Humbert, though, also ended up having a nice, easy win against Morozin, and of course, he does have the home country advantage being in France, so the crowd is definitely going to be in favor of Humbert. However, I think I have to link to Cerundolo here. Assuming fatigue's not going to be an issue, he's been so damn good, and I think you're looking at his overall form. The issue with Cerundolo, I'd say every single year, is that the upside's always there. The issue is he's a head case who's pretty volatile, and right now we are getting the positive swing Cerundolo after having the negative for the first couple months of the year. But he's in great form. We saw him on clay take Djokovic to 5 sets in the French Open. We saw him win Umag. He's in good form. Humbert did look good in the first round, but I really don't want to go up against a guy who's playing the best tennis of his season. And I think with that being the case, I am going to link to Cerundolo. However, I'm not going to actually take the money line. I don't know why I would take the minus 150, but I can just get -1 games at minus 120. I feel like most of the time, if you're going to win on the money line, you're probably covering -1, and you're saving 30 cents. So I do like that price a bit more. Give me Cerundolo -1 as my thoughts on that matchup. For the second match that we're going to talk about, though, jumping around a bit, I was interested in a matchup between actually, we're going to go with Safulin and Etcheverry, because this one is interesting because Etcheverry is a decent favorite. He's around -200, give or take, and you are looking at Safulin at around +175. For the actual spread, -2.5 for Etcheverry, juice to -126, and Safulin +2.5 is +106. For the over-under, you have 22.5, and for the set wagering, the over 2.5 sets is around +125, +130. Safulin to win a set is -180, and Etcheverry to win in straight sets is +140. Now, both guys look good in the first round. Etcheverry ended up beating Seaboth Wild in straight sets with a breaker in the first set, and then he coasted 6-2 in the final set. As for Safulin, he looked really good, as he was able to beat Tabilo in straight sets 6-4, 6-4. I find the line fascinating. They have one career head-to-head meeting, and Safulin did beat Etcheverry in Tel Aviv 2 years ago in a hard court event, as he won comfortably. Hard court, though, really not a good indicator for this clay matchup. But I think Safulin looked very solid. I didn't think he'd beat Tabilo, and he ended up winning comfortably. He's got all the firepower. Etcheverry does not. I think Etcheverry is going to be more interested in keeping the ball in play. But I find the spread fascinating because Etcheverry is really not a great server, and I do think Safulin can find opportunities to break in this matchup. Now, Etcheverry is the better clay player, if I had to compare the two of them, based on resume. But Safulin, I thought, looked pretty good in his matchup in the first round. Etcheverry looked fine as well. But I do think this price is a bit large. I think -200 is pretty steep. I think Safulin is, in my opinion, mispriced here. I'd have him as a dog. I think he should be closer to like +130, in my opinion. I really don't see that much separating these players, and I feel like the odds makers are suggesting Etcheverry has a good chance of winning, and not just winning, but winning comfortably. I don't agree with that. I kind of like the over in the matchup, and I kind of like the actual over 2.5 sets. But I do like Safulin +2.5 games at +106. I think Etcheverry, even if he wins, is susceptible of getting destroyed in a set because he's really not a great server. So if Safulin wins a set, let's say 6-3, you have a decent chance of actually covering the spread even if he loses. So I do think that there's some value on the dog here. I like Etcheverry. I think he's a solid clay player, but the line does feel a bit large to me. And I think with that being the case, I'm going to try to chase the value with the dog here with Safulin. Now, for the matchup of the round, not because of competitiveness, but because of storylines, you have Djokovic against Nadal in what might be the final match of their careers against each other, because Nadal might retire at the end of the year. And you have seen Djokovic once again looking pretty sharp in the Grand Slams, not winning any this year, but he has made the semis, on the quarter semis, etc., and a final in Wimbledon. Nadal, though, we know, has really no gas tank left, and his durability is a question mark, especially with him playing doubles as well with Alcaraz. We'll see how he conserves energy. The point is, though, Djokovic, despite having a very fun matchup on paper, and nostalgia will be pretty, I'd say, present in this matchup, they are expecting an ass kicking because Djokovic is minus 700. Nadal is plus 500. For the over-under, you have 20.5 games. A slight juice to the under. The game spread between minus 4.5 and minus 5.5, depending on where you do get your lines. Djokovic in straight sets, though, is minus 200. So Djokovic ended up beating a last-second replacement in Ebden in the first round, and he lost one game in the entire match. On top of that, he has a rest advantage because he actually played on Saturday. He's one of the only guys to complete his match. The match took 54 minutes in total. Djokovic took the day off yesterday and got to get some rest and practice. Nadal, though, had a war because he played doubles on the first day and had a pretty fun win there in straight sets. Then he ended up having a marathon against Fucsovics, who, by the way, was in really bad form for the last couple of months, and he still went to the brink, and he ended up seeing Nadal win, but I am concerned about Nadal having to play 2.5 hours against Fucsovics, who has really been playing bad tennis for the last couple of months. And Nadal got the job done, good for him, but now he has to play on back-to-back days against Djokovic, who played 54 minutes a day ago. It's an awful spot for Nadal. I understand people might take Nadal anyway because of nostalgia and because of his clay history. I really don't care. I think Djokovic kills him. I feel like a lot of people will get caught up when it comes to evaluating players on the past and not really dealing with the current form of the player. And Nadal made the final in Bastad, which was impressive. But you're looking at who he's played recently. He's dropped a lot of sets against relatively weak competition. Fucsovics was a mess, and he went to 3 sets there. Borges destroyed him after fatigue was an issue in straight sets in the final in Bastad. Played Adjakovic, who was a qualifier in the 100s, and that went to 3 sets. Navone was a solid showing as he won in 3, but Navone still ranked in the mid-30s. And Nori beat in straight sets, who has had a pretty down year, and I believe he's currently outside the top 40. And he beat Borg, who is really not any good. The only reason why he's relevant is because he's Bjorn Borg's son. So Nadal hasn't really beaten anybody worth a damn on clay besides maybe Nori. And Nori's ranked 44th in the world. So it has been a pretty weak level of competition for Nadal, including his final run to Bastad. And now you're against Djokovic with no days off in between after a 2.5-hour marathon. And you're also playing doubles in this event. It's a really bad spot for Nadal. I think he gets his ass kicked. I think Djokovic buries him. I think it's going to be a very lopsided matchup. I don't mind the spread. I don't mind the under. But I do think that I like Nadal team total under in this game at 8.5, or this match at 8.5. I think Nadal gets buried. And if you want to make the argument, Nadal's going to bring it because it's against Djokovic and there's extra motivation. I'm sure Djokovic wants to kick Nadal's ass too. I don't think that motivation's a one-way street. I think Nadal is going to feel the, I'd say, struggle of facing off against a Djokovic that's healthy and a Djokovic that's been in good form recently. I think Nadal's in a world of hurt, and I think it's going to be a pretty lopsided matchup. Moving on, though, to the next matchup that I am going to talk about. Said before that I am going to skip around a bit. The next matchup we're going to talk about, I think, is actually going to be the last matchup between Griekspoor and Alcaraz. Wasn't really a fan of breaking down any other matchups. The Kepfer and Aldi one's interesting, but that's kind of it for the actual card on Monday. However, you have Alcaraz, a massive favorite against Griekspoor, and for this one, Alcaraz is around minus 5.5 games. You have Griekspoor plus 5.5, and the money line is minus 1,800 for Alcaraz, plus 950 for Griekspoor. The over-under is at 19 games, and the over 2.5 sets is plus 350. Now, for this one, Alcaraz, I'm picking to win, obviously. However, the question is, should he be laying this big of a number? Because he beat a complete unknown in the first round. Alcaraz, though, won the French Open. He won Wimbledon, and he won comfortably in his first-round match against Habib, I mean. A 6-3, 6-1 means nothing. Habib's a complete unknown. As for Griekspoor, though, he looked good against the other Tsitsipas, the bad one, who plays doubles, as he won 6-2, 6-3. Doesn't really mean much, but the point is, Griekspoor has still been pretty solid on clay in his career. Can he give Alcaraz a threat? I'll put it this way. If he covered 5.5, I wouldn't be totally shocked. but I do not expect him to win a set here. I think Alcaraz probably wins, if I had to guess. I think it's going to be around like 6-3, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3. So I think the line's actually right, and I think the total's basically right. Cop-out answer, I really don't have much in this matchup, but I expect Alcaraz to win in straight sets, and I think that he probably ends up winning with Griekspoor winning less than, if I had to guess, 8 games in this match. So I'd probably lean to the team total under for a Griekspoor. I think Alcaraz is too good right now, and I think that Griekspoor is going to struggle to do anything of note in this matchup. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the matches on Monday. Moving on to Tuesday, you have Draper against Fritz, which should be a fun one. For this one, you have Fritz as a small favorite of about about 220, actually. So a decent-sized favorite. You have Draper at plus 190. For the actual spread, you have Fritz -3 at minus 115. Draper +3 at minus 105. For the over-under, you have 22.5 games. And for the over 2.5 sets, you have plus 130. Now, they faced off on clay earlier this year as they ended up facing off in Munich, and you ended up seeing Fritz win in 3. That was back in mid-April. They also faced off on grass in 2022, and Draper won in straight sets. But for the sake of this year on clay, Fritz did win, but the matchup was competitive and it went the distance. So Fritz, I think, is the better player right now, but Draper is a pretty underrated clay player. And Fritz did beat Bublik. He did play on Saturday, so he does have a rest advantage, but really no threat to Draper in the first round, as Nishikori still playing, not the same level he used to be, and Draper ended up beating him comfortably, only dropping 5 games in the process. So I do think Draper's alive to actually make this match interesting. I'm kind of going with a rinse and repeat of what happened in Munich a couple months ago. I like the over in this one. I think you're going to get a breaker and maybe 3 sets. Plus 130 I kind of like, though, for the actual over sets, and I don't mind the games here for Draper. I think 3 games is a lot. Bublik is really not a great clay player, so I'm not going to overreact too much to Fritz's win. And even with that, Bublik did win 8 games in the process. I think you're looking at a close matchup. Maybe it goes 3. I am going to lean to Fritz to win because I think that he's the better player right now. I do think that Draper is a solid player, but I think that Fritz is a level above. The point is, I don't mind the over. I think you're going to see a close match that should go potentially the distance, but I think you're going to see Fritz get the job done, in my opinion, 3. But give me the games for Draper and give me the over for the games and for the sets. Moving on to the next couple matches. We don't officially have like a ton of lines for some of these, but we have some lines to work with. So you have Mensik going up against Paul. Now, Mensik got us over the finish line in the first round against Shevchenko, but he has been in good form anyway, winning 3 matches in Umag in straight sets. I lost to Musetti, but Musetti's been in great form. As for Paul, he looked very good in his first match against Darderi. Good win there, 6-3, 6-4. Looking at the head-to-head, there is no history. So Paul in this one is a slight favor, about minus 175. You're looking at Mensik at plus 138. I think Mensik, despite being in great form, I think he might be a bit too cheap here. I still think Paul's the better player, and Paul's a decent clay player. He's not amazing, but I do think that he is the better player than Mensik right now. Mensik maybe can make it interesting, but I do think 175 for Paul is actually kind of cheap. I thought it should have been closer to like minus 200 if I had to price it myself. Mensik has been in good form, but Shevchenko is really not great on clay, and that's why we backed him. I recognize the form, but Paul does have a lot of consistency, and I do think he can potentially, I'd say, force some unforced errors from Mensik on the clay. So I am going to lean to Paul, but I do think that for the actual price, it's mostly based on Paul's number. I think Paul should be a bigger favorite, and for comparison, I think there's no way that Echeverry, for example, should be around minus 200, while Paul's around minus 175. I don't agree with that pricing at all by comparison, so I am going to lean to Paul, in my opinion, at a pretty mispriced number. I like Mensik a lot. If he wins, I wouldn't be shocked because I like him as a player, but the price feels off to me. Give me Paul as a favorite. Moving on to what should be a pretty interesting matchup. You have Musetti taking on Navone. For this one, you have Musetti at minus 220, give or take, and you have Navone at around plus 175. You have Navone being 1-0 in the head-to-head as he beat him this year, actually, in Italy. So in Musetti's home country, as he beat him in the middle of May, or early May, 7-5, 6-1. So Navone did beat Musetti this year on clay. Musetti, though, has flipped the switch, and he has been great for the last couple of weeks. Now, Navone looked good in the first round, but it was pretty straightforward, beating Borges in straight sets. Borges was fresh off of the clay title in Bastad, and Navone went through him like it was nothing. So a nice, easy winner for him. As for Musetti, he had an easy win against Monfils, but fatigue's still an issue because he did end up playing 4 matches in Umag and ended up having to play matches for. He played the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, and the 28th. Luckily, though, this is going to be on Tuesday, so there will be a day off for him on Monday, which will let him get some rest in. So fatigue will not be as big of an issue for this match as the first round was, which turned out to not be an issue at all because he beat Monfils pretty comfortably. Point is for this one, I think it's going to be close. I think that Navone is a talented player, but it just feels like that when you're looking at Musetti play right now, I have a hard time seeing many guys on clay really standing up to him, and Navone is really not a good server, which has been an issue for him in the last couple of matches he's played. Nadal, especially, in that matchup that ended up going 4 hours. The serve let him down, and Musetti, I do think, is going to be able to stand far behind the court. Navone is not a great volleyer by any means, and I do think that, as a result, Musetti will win more free points on his serve. The question is 220. Do I want to step in front of Musetti? I really don't. I think Navone can make it competitive, so maybe if you want to make an argument for the over, but I think Musetti's going to win, and I think that he might end up covering the games here. I think I am actually going to give Navone a little bit of credit, though. I think I'm going to lean to the over, but I think Musetti wins. So that's kind of going to be my stance on that. Navone looked good in the first round. Musetti's been great. Monfils, though, is really nowhere near as good as he used to be. And I did think that Musetti had a good opportunity to win comfortably, even with a rest disadvantage. But it's a lot of tennis for him. Navone can maybe prolong some rallies. I don't mind maybe the over in that matchup. I'm probably not going to bet it, though. That's more of a matchup to watch and see what happens for fun. Not going to probably bet that one, though, in my opinion. Moving on to what I think is going to be the last match we talk about for this round. You have a matchup between Struff and Moutet. Now, Moutet had a marathon in the first round, beating the likes of Nagal in 3 sets, 7-5 in the final set. Struff had an easy win against Cabral in the first round after De Minaur ended up dropping out. Now, you're looking at Struff, and he was fine in Gstaad, beat Ramos Vinolas, beat Reddy, ended up beating Echeverry, and then lost to Hallis in straight sets before beating Cabral in the first round. For Moutet, we know that he was in great form in the French Open. Then he lost to Sinner. Then he ended up playing grass for 2 matches, got injured, and took the time off. Faced off against Nagal, though, who's a pretty solid clay challenger player that went to 3. The issue is in the head-to-head. Struff did dominate the only clay meeting between them. Faced off in Bordeaux, so in Moutet's home country last year, and Struff did beat him 6-3, 6-2. The problem that I have with Moutet in this matchup is it kind of reminds me of the final that we actually just saw in Kitzbühel between Gaston and Berrettini. A lot of finesse in Moutet's overall play, which can make him dangerous. The issue is he's still a really bad server. And we saw eventually in that Berrettini match against Gaston, the firepower for the taller player was a bit too much for the short Frenchman to handle, and the serve differential was massive. We're looking at a guy who's extremely short in Moutet. Struff is a very solid server. He probably won't get broken that much, and Struff should be able to get into a lot of Moutet service games, which is why I do think that Struff is probably going to win. I think Moutet's fun. Maybe he can force an unforced errors from Struff to keep it interesting, but he will be playing most of the match on his back foot because Struff should be trying to unload the forehand as much as possible. He also can rally and volley pretty well, so I do think you're looking at Struff probably winning in straight sets here. He's minus 278. Moutet maybe can ride the crowd, but going 3 sets against a fellow rallier like Nagal does not exactly instill much confidence in me. That's his first match played since mid-June. Not many reps recently, and Struff was pretty solid on clay going into this event. I think Struff serve's going to be the difference maker here, and Moutet I do like, but I think get broken a couple of times, and I'm not sure how many times Struff's going to get broken here. So give me Struff in straight sets in this one. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual second round preview. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks. Both into that, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm has a lot of AI picks and props that you might be missing out on. They just dropped a bunch of winners for the M3 Open, and their football models are about to drop. You can even customize your own betting models easily using Rhythm's tools. I know my friend, Adam Rosenberg, ended up using Rhythm actually to create a golf model, and he had Vegas to win this past week at around 75-1. So that definitely worked out. You can make models, and my friend made one while also hitting a 75-1 shot with that model for Rhythm in golf. Claim your Sunday free trial today by going to sportscampbuckets.com Rhythm, sportscampbuckets.com/RITHMM. We're also brought to you by Circuit Survivor and Circuit Million. Circuit Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. And of course, if you don't have a trip booked yet for Las Vegas, you should book yourself a trip for the McDonald's this weekend because it's a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean, enjoy some of the open bar events at the World's Best Sportsbook from August 22nd through the 24th. Use promo code SGP15 to save 15% off your hotel room for sign-up weekend. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th. Use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com. Save you $50 with the promo code SGP. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the second round. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. Starting off for the lock, we are going to go to a matchup that I mentioned before. Going to go to the marquee matchup between Djokovic and Nadal taking place on Monday. For this one I mentioned before, I think Djokovic wins comfortably. I am going to back that overall script. However, Djokovic in straight sets is minus 200, so I'm not going to go with it in the spread. I didn't like too much at 5. Give me Nadal team total under 8.5 games and minus 120 as my lock. This was on DraftKings, by the way, for reference. Couple reasons why. First of all, Nadal has been playing a lot of tennis recently, and he made a deep run in Bastad, but he has been dropping a lot of sets to pretty weak competition. Nadal's dropped at least 1 set in 4 straight clay matches, and all 4 opponents were ranked outside the top 35. Fucsovics was in awful form, and the last match he actually won was a clay match on I want to say in a challenger event in May. So Fucsovics was in really bad form, and Nadal really struggled against him for a decent portion of the matchup. And the match itself took 2.5 hours. So Nadal's up there in years. We saw in Bastad. Eventually, the fatigue got to him. He's also playing doubles, and he ended up having no days off after playing on Sunday. And Djokovic did not play yesterday because he played on Saturday. So Nadal's in a really bad spot here. Djokovic, I think, tries to make a statement. I think Djokovic tries to go for blood. And I think Nadal's in serious trouble for this matchup. I think it's pretty telling when you're looking at a history of intense battles between these two, and Djokovic is minus 700. They're telling you that Nadal's got no chance in hell. I agree, and I think I'm going to back that accordingly with a pretty affordable number. What I like also about the actual matchup is the fact that Djokovic ended up winning his first-round match in 54 minutes. He coasted, looked very solid on clay. No reason to be concerned about the overall surface change. But I do also like the fact that you're looking at Djokovic, who is, in my opinion, still in solid form. And the issue is he's not as good as Alcaraz anymore, or Sinner, but he's still a top 3 player in the world. And Nadal is nowhere near that. But Nadal, I think, is going to struggle, and Djokovic, I think, will be able to dominate. What I do like about the play, though, is also the idea that Djokovic can win a set in a lopsided fashion. Let's say worst-case scenario, Nadal goes to a tiebreak in the first set, maybe goes to a 7-5. Do I think Djokovic can beat Nadal 6-2 or worse in a set? 100%. So that being the case, I do think there's a couple ways to get there. 2 straightforward sets, maybe 1 competitive set and 1 easy set. Point is, though, 8.5 does feel a bit high for me. Give me the team total under for Nadal in this one. I do think that minus 120 at 8.5 is a solid price. I saw Bet365 had 7.5 actually. So take the 8.5 now before it's gone. I think it will be gone before the match actually starts. Moving on, though, to the dog for the episode. I'm going to go to a matchup I didn't talk about. Going to be a rematch of the Umag final last year between Wawrinka and Papirin. And this one is the definition of a baby dog. Can't really go much lower than this, but give me Wawrinka on the money line at even money. Wawrinka lost to Kotov in the French Open, and he responded by kicking his ass in the media rematch as he ended up beating him 6-1, 6-1 in the first round. He looked flawless. He was incredible in the match, and I do think he should look sharp in this one as well. Papirin has not been really in good form recently, as he has lost 3 of the last 4 matches he's played in. Did beat Jari in the first round, but Jari has been in really bad form as well for the last couple months. So the win is solid, was competitive, but Jari's been in really bad form. So I'm going to put a little asterisk next to it, at least acknowledging that Papirin had a relatively easier opponent than name brand suggests, because Jari's been in a massive downswing for the last couple months. But they faced off in Umag, which, as we saw last week, is really a place where you want to unload a lot of firepower. These courts in Roland Garros, not so much. I do think that the slower courts in this event are going to benefit Wawrinka. He looked very good in the first round. Papirin, I thought, looked solid, but he was a bit vulnerable against Jari, who'd not been in good form. I think Wawrinka, at even money, is actually mispriced here. I think he should be a slight favorite. You could argue it's a coin flip, but I'll take plus money on the coin flip. Point is, Wawrinka looked very good in the first round. I think he's in line for a good showing here, and I do think that Papiron, being not so much in great form, is vulnerable. Give me Wawrinka on the money line at even money. I think this one was available on Bet365, I believe. Some books had a minus 110. I saw minus 115 on BetMGM, but Bet365 had even money, so I'm going to go with that as my dog. So once again, the picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Nadal team total under 8.5 games, minus 120, and my dog's going to be on a Wawrinka money line at plus 100. A reminder, before the actual third round episode for the Olympics, we are going to have another episode, which will be the preview of the City Open for Washington. We are going to do that later tonight. Hopefully, the Atlanta match finishes by then, so we can recap the lock and dog picks for that episode too. But if not, we're still going to cover it. So stay tuned for an episode in probably a couple hours for DC. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show as well, on the WNBA show. A reminder, you should also like, subscribe on YouTube, and a reminder, don't forget to review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.